Okay, everyone. Everybody make it back okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Rather than me sitting here basically just telling you all kinds of stuff about myself you don't care about, I'm going to give you guys a chance to ask some questions, but there's quite a few of you. I don't want this to take forever. So what I'm going to do is break everyone up into breakout rooms. If have you guys done breakout rooms before in Zoom with any of your classes? Yeah, no, no. Okay.
No.
All right. So what's going to happen? I'm going to, there's a little over 40 of you. So what I'm going to do is divide you up into 10 groups. This is going to be random to start with. So it's, I have no idea who's going to end up in what group, but that's okay. It'll give you a chance to say hi to each other. I'm going to give you, as a group, 5 minutes. And when that 5 minutes, so during that 5 minutes, what you're going to do, along with saying hello to each other and that type of a thing, is you're going to come up with a question to ask me. You get one question per group, and you'll have to select a representative from your group. And when you get back, every one of the groups is going to have an opportunity to ask a question, and I will answer almost anything. Yeah, so whatever you want to ask is fine. Okay, questions sound okay? Nothing in chat. Awesome. All right. So where's my breakout room? There it is. Okay, so in a second, what will happen is it'll pop up on your screen that you're going to be moved into a breakout room. What that means is you'll be able to communicate with the other folks who are in the room with you, but nobody else will be able to see or hear what you're doing. This is being recorded, by the way, so keep it clean. And then I'll let you know when you need to get back. So that 1 minute timer closing breakout rooms is a new feature at no extra cost and unadvertised. Isn't that awesome? Okay, so now's your chance to interrogate the other way. This is the last time you have to do this semester, so make it good. Who wants to go first?
I guess we'll start from group 4 if we can.
Okay, you're kind of breaking up. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to hear you or not.
Can you hear me now, or?
I can hear you. It's just really staticky when you speak. That's all. But try it. If it doesn't work out, you can type it in the chat.
Okay. Well, I'll ask it away. What would be your interests and hobbies if it's between? If you're not teaching, what's your interests and hobbies?
Oh, did you say hobby?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hobbies.
If I'm not teaching,
sorry.
Geez, that's a good question. It's changed a lot. And the reason with COVID, and the reason I say that is because I was kind of one of the designated drivers for our grandkids' sports. So very much into minor hockey and soccer. And obviously that's not been happening. So as a result of that, over the summer, I had an opportunity to pick my guitar up again for the first time in like about 30 years. And yeah, I suck, but I don't suck as bad now as I did back in May. So music is a pretty big hobby for me. So that is where I'm at with that. Okay, who's next?
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
I guess I'll go.
Sure.
One question our group came up with was, how have you seen your industry like change over the years since you started out in IT?
Oh my God, how do I answer this? So I started IT in 1982. Does anybody have, I know you won't recall because most of you weren't here in 1982, but does anybody have any idea of the major significance of 1982 in computing? No, okay. So 1982 was the year that, oh, Colin was born that year. Awesome. So 1982 was not only the year of that Colin arrived on the scene, but it's also the year that the IBM PC was first introduced on the scene. So when I started in IT, and my background is electrical engineering, there was no such thing as IT school when I was in college. In fact, it wasn't even called IT back then. Like that term hadn't been created yet. So everything was compute-wise was a lot of mainframe stuff, which probably most of you will never see in your lifetimes. There was mini computers were starting to really proliferate in businesses, and the IBM PC was first introduced in 1982. And you know, if you think about the horsepower of the first PC, your phone is probably over 1,000 times more powerful than the first PCs that came on the market. You know, storage wise, you know, we had in those days we had floppy disks, which again is something probably most of you will never see unless you look up a picture of it on the internet, kind of a thing. But they held an entire 160 KB of data. All right, like that kind of a thing. So, and at the time there was, I mean, there were networks, but not the way you think. Like networks were incredibly rare. Like it's something we just didn't have. So, you know, going from, you know, the original 8088 processors, which were 8-bit in the first PCs, to the 64-bit, whether it's in your phone and it's ARM based, or whether It's Core something in your laptop or desktop, or if it's Xeon or possibly AMD, if you're on the server side, and all the virtualization and the internet and all of the electronic communications and like wireless networking, like going from less than a megabit per second in networking, and it was all wired with like cables that literally were about that big around, to, today where, wireless fiber optic, like that was just non-existent. Like people just didn't do it, kind of a thing. So I'm not really sure how to describe change other than it's just unbelievable, what's gone on in the past like 35 to 40 years. Just absolutely insane. And the scary thing is we're at the beginning of that. Like if you look at technology and change, it's still on, very much a very steep slope, going up, not down. But one thing I will mention about that, actually, no, I'm not going to say anything about that yet because it might be a question. So if it's not, I'll come back to it and sort of career path and that kind of thing. But yeah, the change is just insane, how much things change. And even for you guys, I mean, if you look at, probably, I'm guessing that most of you are probably, at least on your second or maybe third phone kind of a thing. Some of you maybe not, but if you look at even just the jump in phone tech, over a year-long period, and it's like, oh wow, yeah, I can do this, like, I couldn't do that before, and all those kinds of things. It's like, think of that over that kind of a change over 35 to 40 years, and there's that much change every year. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. Okay. Who's up next?
Sure, I'll go.
Sure.
So we were going to ask you if you have any funny stories regarding IT, because somebody told me that you have quite a few.
I do. Let me see. Funny stories about IT. What do I pick that's clean? So one story, not sure how, some people didn't find it very funny, but I did. I was working with a customer. We'd installed a network, and they were on 2 floors of an office building, but there was a floor in between, which was actually the mechanical floor for the building. So like all the, air makeup fans, like all that kind of stuff, was on that floor. And I had been encouraging them. So we had to run cable between the 2 floors, and we had to run through the floor that the building folks own with all the mechanical stuff in it. And I had been encouraging them to, make sure that we ran fiber optic cable up there so we wouldn't have any interference. And we looked on that floor, and everything was actually fine where the conduit went between the floors. And they went, no, we don't want to spend the money on fiber optic. And back then, fiber optic was expensive. At that time, to run fiber optic was about $20 a foot, or around $75 a meter, kind of a thing. So they said, no, we just want to use copper. I said, fine. And everything was great for about 6 months. I got a call one day, and it's like, so the top floor keeps disappearing off the network. And there were about 180 people up there. It was like, okay. And it took us quite a while to find that, because what had happened was the building had installed an air compressor, and it happened to be right above the telecom room. So there was an electric motor that was about that far from the cable that would never been there before. So every time the compressor started, the network would drop off. And that happened about 20 times a day. So of course it was like, oh, well, how are we going to fix this? I said, that fiber optic cable. Well, we don't want to pay for that. And I said, fine. So this company actually did a cost benefit analysis of installing $150 worth of fiber optic cable. and compared that to the cost of their downtime for 180 people getting knocked off the network 20 times a day and having files get corrupted. It took them 2 weeks to do that cost benefit analysis. And they went, yeah, we think we want to install the fiber optic cable. And it's like, oh, duh. But yeah, so that's one, I guess. It's kind of funny. I thought it was funny. I thought it was hilarious, but they didn't think it was. The people who were getting knocked off the network didn't think it was funny at all because they were working overtime because of all the work they had to do, right? Obviously, the people making the decision, they were not up on the top floor getting knocked off the network. That probably would have made the decision really quick if it was them. But. Next up.
I'll go next.
What's? Oh, sorry.
No, you got it, man. You go first. I'll go after.
You sure?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. What skills or abilities do you believe make you stand out the most in your field?
You mean teaching or on the IT side?
Yeah, on the IT side, sorry.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad that I didn't talk about this before. So there's a couple things. There's two things, I think, or actually three, I guess. One, and this is something that's worked very well for me over the years, is I've always tried to get into the technology that was kind of bleeding edge stuff. Not because you would implement it right away, because I mean, you'll find that IT is pretty conservative most of the time. You don't find a whole lot of people in IT who are willing to bet their job on some new technology that they don't trust yet, and rightly so. I mean, I've seen the latest and greatest go sideways in a really spectacular way a number of times, and it's been really, really bad in some cases. In some cases, not too bad, but in other cases, like really bad. The one thing you do have to be ready for, though, is when that tips, and it typically tips really, really quickly, that all of a sudden companies think, hey, this is a good thing and we need to do this. Then there's this incredible shortage of people that are able to do that work. Probably, one that everybody would recognize, because you recognize the technologies, and when companies decided they needed to get connected to the internet, because the internet was around for quite a while before companies kind of got into it, and people didn't have websites and stuff like that. But all of a sudden, it was like, it wasn't just that one company decided today that they need to get their employees connected to the internet, and we should probably have this website up and running and stuff like that. It was millions of them all at the same time. And and that was one of the areas that I kind of looked at this and I thought, this is something that we need to know about. And how do you actually do this? Because it's not like at home now, it's easy, right? You call up the cable company or whoever and say, hey, I want to get connected to the internet. They send you out a device, you screw it into the wall and you plug in and away you go. Everything's wireless. You don't even have to, do anything to plug yourself in. But back then that wasn't like that at all. Like there were many different services, there were different types of services, all from one company, obviously, because at the time it was only the phone company, but picking out that service and the equipment you needed and how you configured it, and knowing how to talk to the engineers at Bell, in this area and all the rest of that kind of thing, that was not straightforward. And, I made, from a consulting perspective, I made a lot of money getting companies plugged into the internet, that kind of a thing. But And it hasn't been just that, it's been like a lot of different things, but I make sure that I'm up to speed on the bleeding edge stuff. And that means self-education. And you'll find that being able to self-educate in this world is really, really important. So that's one thing. Second thing is I get along with people pretty well, which means that people don't hate me when I walk into the room in most companies. I mean, there's always some you don't get along with, but that works well. Because the other thing that ends up happening, and I've had my consulting company since like 1989. So, I've been doing that for a lot of years. And more often than not, when you walk into the room from outside, if there's somebody there that's doing IT, they feel kind of threatened because you're there because they can't do something is really what it comes down to. So, being able to make people feel at ease working with me is something that's really, really valuable. And those aren't in any particular order, by the way. I consider them to be equally important. And the third thing that I also consider to be equally important is communications. It's something that in the beginning I struggled with a lot personally, but I learned over the years, and being able to communicate with people clearly, and especially when you have technical subject matter, which is what we do. It doesn't get much more technical than what we're doing. And needing to communicate with people who have pretty much no clue what you're talking about. And not only communicate, but convince them that they need to be doing something when they don't understand it and they have to write a check to pay the bill for it, that's something that's hugely important as well. So those are the main things I think that kind of lead to the success, if you want. Next question.
Hi there. We just want to know what made you want to get into teaching?
That's a great question. So I kind of started back in the mid 80s, doing like some part-time teaching at the college kind of a thing, computer stuff, of course. But we had, and again, here's a case of demand, right? So back in the mid 80s, a lot of companies were getting into computer-aided design, like manufacturing companies and that. And they were buying all the software and hardware and all the rest of this kind of thing, but they needed to, there was a lot of training that was required for people to learn how to use the software. And Conestoga was actually, that's where I actually started doing the teaching thing. A person that I knew really well reached out and said, hey, would you be interested in doing some part-time courses to teach people how to use a piece of software that I happen to know really well, but there was very few people that knew it well. And I had never taught before at all. And I said, yeah, sure. I'll give, the money was good. So I thought, I'll give it a shot. Why not? If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I'll tell you, the first day that I started that, I was scared to death. It was like, you're standing there in front of a room full of, and this was like a whole bunch of mechanical engineers kind of thing. Like that was the audience. It wasn't people who were there for general interest. It was like, I need to know this to do my job. So, I need you to help me sort all this stuff out. So it's pretty intimidating, when you do something like that for the first time, or at least it was to me anyway. But I just, anybody who is in teaching will tell you that the reason you're there is when you're working with a bunch of learners, and when you see that light bulb come on for somebody, and it was like, oh man, this is awesome, kind of a thing. There is nothing better in the world than that. That's the only reason anybody ever teaches, because I'll tell you, it's got nothing to do with anything else. It's not because of the money. It's not because of the great hours or anything else like that. It's because of the passion for it. So that's how I got started in, and that's why I like to do it. And when you get to be an old fart like me, and somebody comes up and says, hey, would you like to do this full time? And it's like, sure. So that's why, I'm here, kind of a thing. Next question.
I'll grab next. Through your years of navigating through the IT industry, do you have any tips and advisement on moving through jobs and opportunities, or traveling to grab a job, or along those lines? What would you say would be the best direction? Just to be completely open, or stick to a certain region, something along those lines?
That is going to depend on your personal needs. Oh, Doug, you changed the question. Oh no, you're in trouble with the group. That's going to depend on your personal needs. So when I started, I was doing a lot of travel for various things. And in fact, the most travel, I ended up in the late 80s working for a software company that was headquartered in Paris, and their North American office was in Boston. And I was the Southern Ontario field engineer, which means that I was supposed to be supporting both our sales team and new customers. And for whatever reason, our Southern Ontario sales team never really panned out. I won't get into it. I mean, I know what happened, but I won't get into the details. But I ended up supporting people who were not in Southern Ontario. So I was one of those guys that typically got on an airplane on Sunday afternoon, you know, and I got back home like either very late Friday night or early Saturday morning. So I had, you know, around a little over 24 hours to kind of regenerate and do my laundry and get on an airplane again. I racked up an awful lot of frequent flyer miles. I got to do some super cool stuff in the process of doing that. And kind of after I've been doing that for a little bit over a year, or actually, no, sorry. After I've been doing that for a little bit over half a year, I got married. And about 6 months after that, my wife kind of looked at me and said, "So, not 100% sure why we're married because you're never home." I went, "Oh, yeah, good point." And just as I was about to talk to that company and say, "Hey, you know, we need to kind of change up a little bit what's going on," what I was told is, and I won't get into the details, but I was basically told, "Yeah, you're going to have to spend 2 months in London, England." I said, "Oh," I said, "that sounds kind of cool. Can my wife go?" "No." And I resigned the next day because there was no way that was going to happen. I mean, I love that job. It was cool. But at the same time, that kind of launched my consulting company. So that turned out to be a good thing. So if you can travel, it's awesome, you know, for if you like that kind of thing. And typically there are consulting companies out there that are just dying to hire people that they can send out to a customer site. Their main thing in hiring, you know, one is, can you do what you need to do? But the other part of it is, can I put you in front of a customer or not? Like, do I feel comfortable with you standing in front of a customer? So that's one thing you can do. If that's not for you, like if your personal life won't let you do that, then obviously, you know, look for something that doesn't require the travel, you know, or at least not a lot of it. And now, you know, one of the things that's cool with IT, and it's getting more so now than with COVID around, but you know, there've been always IT jobs you can work from home. You know, if you're comfortable doing that, you have to be motivated enough to do the work. We've had a couple of grads before who took those jobs and they weren't quite motivated, and they ended up being removed from the position because they were at home but not doing their job, kind of a thing. So that's obviously bad. But if you're motivated enough to do that kind of work on your own, awesome. You know, that's a great thing to do. If you like socializing more, that's probably a bad thing to do. So, you know, under those circumstances, you'll want to find a place that you're going to be working, you know, with an organization like in their facility, whatever that turns out to be. So, for example, like the college IT folks, normally, not now, obviously, but you know, normally they're all on site at one of our campuses, and then, you know, the other option is to work for more of like an outsourcing company where you can travel around from one customer to another, but it's typically pretty local, you know, kind of a thing. So, you know, a really good, a friend of mine who's a graduate as well, you know, he works out of Guelph. So he basically works for an outsourcer out of his own, he works out of his home office, kind of a thing. And for him, kind of Guelph, Woodstock, actually a little bit further west than that, not a whole lot, a little bit, you know, north up through St. Clements, kind of a thing, and down south as far as probably Simcoe-ish area. So that's kind of the area that he travels in. So he's out visiting customers a lot, you know, kind of a thing, but he's home every day, you know, at the end of the day. So, you know, those are kind of the choices, and it really depends on you and what you like. But if you like to travel, those jobs are fairly easy to get because an awful lot of people, they don't like that or they can't. Right now, yeah, no, you're not traveling. You're not traveling a lot to large distances, obviously, because of the travel restrictions that are on and that kind of a thing. So tons and tons of choice. But yeah, there's just so many different things that you can do with that. So, pick what you like, pick your passion, and you can always change your mind. I know for most people that travel, that gets old after a while. And those things, people joke and go, hey, if it's Tuesday, I must be in such and such a place or something like that. It really does get that way. It's so easy. I mean, I'll tell you, you don't know what day it is. And most of the time you don't even know where you are. You just get up in the morning, you look at the calendar on your phone and it's like, oh, I have to be, oh yeah, the alarm went off at 5:30 because I need to be at this place at such and such a time. If you get to that point that you're walking through the airport and you hear your name paged and you're thinking, oh, that's probably actually me and not somebody else with the same name. That's, I've had that happen. I had that happen a lot in the past. It's like, before cell phones, cell phones make that all redundant now. But when you're walking through the airport, Jim Dixon, please pick up the nearest courtesy phone. And it's like that's actually probably me that's supposed to pick up the nearest courtesy phone. So, but tells you when I was traveling because we didn't have cell phones back then. But. Okay, what else you got?
All right, I think I'll go next.
Sure.
So what was it that first made you want to get into the IT industry?
I didn't. I got into IT totally by accident. I was actually, I'm a graduate of Conestoga, and when I graduated, the reason that I was hired is that, remember I said back in 1982 when the IBM PC was introduced and Colin was born. That's also when I graduated from college. So when I got out, the college was hiring because they were buying microcomputers for the students to use, and it's something they didn't have at the time, and they needed somebody to maintain that stuff. These days with your computer, when you turn it on and it actually runs for like long periods of time before it dies, either it crashes or you have to like replace parts or something like that. Back then it wasn't like that. So I applied, I got hired, excuse me, to actually maintain the microcomputer stuff. And probably most of you don't know that Xerox actually made microcomputers at one point in time. But the college had just bought, I think it was like 80 or something like that of these things. So one of the very first things I ever did was installed, 80 Xerox PCs. Which actually were quite good. They work. There was a couple things in them that was bad design, but they worked pretty well. Then they bought the IBM ones because, of course, we just had to have the real IBM ones. So we got 80 of those, and about 30% of them were dead on arrival. That was an interesting experience because IBM provided all the field support. And back then, if you were an IBM field engineer, you actually showed up with like a blue pinstripe suit and a tie and white shirt and all that kind of thing, polished black shoes. Like that was your uniform. And they would show up when we would call because something was broken and they had no idea how to fix a PC at all because they weren't trained in it. Like they didn't have PC school like they had mainframe school. So these guys would show up with this manual and they'd be reading through the manual trying to figure out how to fix stuff, kind of a thing. In fact, that was something that was kind of cool is I actually had a ton of spare parts at Conestoga, which was not something they were supposed to do. And I actually had IBM field engineers phoning me, asking me how to fix PCs, which was also pretty interesting. So I was kind of dumped into IT. Like that was the beginning of IT. That was not actually all of what I was hired for. I was hired to do a bunch of other stuff too, to support our electronics engineering program. And that kind of just disappeared over about a 6 to 8 month period because the college was buying. So remember that computer aided design software I was talking about? So the colleges in Ontario all got money from the provincial government to get computer aided design hardware and software. Because it was this big thing that was coming up and our students needed to be trained in that. So I got pulled onto the team that was doing the evaluation. I knew nothing about computer aided design software at all. Didn't have a clue. And that software was too powerful to run on PCs back then, so it didn't. And we didn't have servers back then the way we have now. So we were buying these mini computers. I had never seen a mini computer. I hadn't heard of one. I really didn't care about them. It wasn't what I wanted to do. But my boss tossed me on this team and was like, okay, you have to go out and evaluate this stuff. I learned an awful lot in the process. We bought this stuff and said, hey, Jim, you're taking care of this thing. And it's like, okay, so I get this thing that basically looks like 3 fridges standing side by side. And that's, it's like, okay, you have to make sure that this thing's running all the time and take care of it and do all the backups. And I didn't know what backups were. We didn't do backups back then. Like that kind of thing, right? So those are the things that kind of went on, back then. And I mean, that computer, so one of the first things I ever did after I started working was on a team that we spent like $500,000 on something. That was pretty cool. I learned I like spending money. That was neat, kind of a thing. But that $500,000 got us, now check this out, 4 megabytes of RAM. And we had a gigabyte of hard disk, a whole gigabyte of hard disk, right, for $500,000. So yeah, I just got kind of thrown into IT and it was like, hey, this is neat. And I just kept, and the other thing was that I found out when you were in IT that you could make a lot of money doing that. So somebody asked a little bit earlier about changing companies. I never worked full-time for anybody for more than 3 years, except now because I'm just past 3 years. But you just jumped because people would come off. So I was working for the college. There was a manufacturing company that found out that I was supporting exactly the same hardware and software that they just bought. And one of our software vendors said, hey, you need somebody to maintain this, go and call this Jim Dixon guy. So they reached out and said, would you be interested in coming and working for us? And it was like, not really. Back then I was very heavily into aerospace and they're an aerospace manufacturer, but I thought, hey, I'd like to go and get a plant tour. So I went for an interview so I could go for a plant tour basically. And I got invited back for a second interview, which I wasn't really going to go to, but I thought that would be rude. So I went. They didn't tell me ahead of time it was going to be a whole day, but it was. And at the end of it, they offered me a job for like about 35% more money than I was making at the college. And at the college, you couldn't go up because, union slots and all the rest of that kind of thing. It's like, oh, okay. So I took the job, and I was there for just a little over 3 years and a software company came up and said, would you like to come work for us? It's like, oh, I don't know. I really like what I'm doing here. And they're going, so we're going to offer you this much money if you come and work for us. It's like, oh, okay. So it's just one of those more money kind of a thing. And, companies have a hard time kind of looking at it and saying, we're going to keep you and pay you a ton more money. So yeah, that happens a lot. Question, what program did I graduate from? It was called electrical engineering technology at the time. Now it's called computer engineering technology. Next question. Do we have any more? I wasn't keeping track.
Hello. Can you hear me?
No, somebody's really quiet.
Hello.
Yep, there we go.
So our question was, what's the worst student you've ever had?
I'm not going to give out names for that. If you mean by what was worst about them, just very, very disruptive in class for no good reason. So don't be disruptive in class or I won't like you. No, I'm kidding. But yeah. But being professional, being polite to your classmates, that's always super important. So be that person. Okay, what else you got?
One of our questions was, how long have you been teaching for at Conestoga?
Full time, I've been teaching. I started in, let me think, fall 2007, so 3 years. Or sorry, 2017, so 3 years. But I've been teaching contract for like over 20 years now. So, I'm far from new to this stuff.
Another question we had is, what programming languages are you proficient in, and what's your least favorite?
Right now, what I'm most proficient in is PowerShell and Python. Least favorite, probably Java. And the reason I say that is I think there were some design decisions they made when they created Java that I really, it makes it extremely cumbersome to program with. But to be perfectly honest, anything that really forces object-oriented methods, I'm not really keen on, because quite frankly, I find the whole design paradigm for object-oriented programming to be, it is not lived up to what it should be, in my opinion. The whole idea behind object-oriented programming is so that you could have a lot of code reusability, and that just did not happen. I also decided that I'm going to teach myself how to program in Swift, so I've been playing around with that a little bit. I love that language. That is really, really cool, the way that they design Swift. I totally understand why IBM adopted that as their strategic programming language. But we'll see with that. What else? I'm not sure if we're at the end or not, because I haven't been keeping track. So.
Hello.
Hi, Smith.
Sir, Professor, what's the hardest thing you had been faced in your IT career?
The hardest, sorry, what?
Your hardest thing you face in your IT career.
Oh, the hardest thing I faced.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say anything technical. I think probably the hardest thing I've ever faced is having to fire people. I hate doing that. I mean, I don't think anybody enjoys it, but if they do, they probably should just go away somewhere and hide in a hole. But yeah, I really, really dislike having to deal with that. And yeah, I have had to do that. But so yeah, if Trump enjoys it, yeah. Yeah, he is bringing him in to take care of the problem. But yeah, yeah, that's the thing that I find the hardest. I do not get any kind of enjoyment or satisfaction out of that at all. Any other questions?
Our question is, are we gonna have programming this semester, and what language we will use, and then the software we're gonna use?
You are. In fact, you're going to meet Professor Yingbo tomorrow, who's doing your programming course. I think you'll really enjoy having class with him. You're going to be learning C#, and I think you're going to be using Visual Studio for that. I'm not sure if you're going to be using Visual Studio Core or not. Any others?
Do you have much experience working in the Linux environment?
Tons. Yeah. Yeah, Linux is for companies who actually know what they want to do with IT. I mean, I don't want this to be taken the wrong way. I don't have a whole lot of use for Windows, to be perfectly honest. I mean, Microsoft has done some cool things with Windows, but at the same time, they hold the tech industry back because of the fact that they're so dominant, and I find that completely disgusting, quite frankly. But you know, it is what it is, so that's what we end up dealing with. But Linux, you know, from stability to security, I shouldn't say just Linux, because there are Nix style operating systems that are more secure than Linux is, but when it comes to stability and performance and security, it's just way, way, way beyond what Windows is. So yeah, I've got quite a bit of experience there.
Yeah, I've been trying to learn about it as much as I can by myself. So I just wanted to see if you had any experience in it.
You'll get a pretty heavy dose of Linux getting into, you'll start in second semester, but you'll get a pretty heavy dose in third and fourth semesters into the Linux side of things.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, that's why I use a Mac, because it's got Unix on it. You know, if Linux wasn't so annoying, I just use Linux on a PC. But quite frankly, using it on a day-to-day basis, it's annoying. So I don't. I tried. I really did. I was like, yeah, it's just no.
Yeah, it gets a little bit testing, doesn't it?
It does, and probably most of that is because there's so many different distributions of Linux, and some are really good at some things, and you know, either not so good or terrible at other things, and trying to find one that does everything that you actually need it to do on a day-to-day basis is really challenging. I know some friends of mine who are just like Linux or nothing kind of a thing, and most of them have multiple virtual machines running with different flavors of Linux that they flip back and forth between depending on what they want to do. Yeah, I saw Mint come up. Yeah, Mint's something that's you know, fairly decent. But then the other side of it is you know, is Debian or Red Hat flavor something that you need to do, and quite often you need to work with both depending on what applications you're trying to support. It just gets yeah, it just gets a little bit trying. So I got something that actually does everything. Are there any more questions? That we must be awfully close to 10, if not. I'm only asking because there's a few things I want to go through from a program orientation or a course orientation perspective before we break up for the day. Oh, okay. So let me share screen out here with you. I want to point out some things about our course. Okay, so I know you've all had or been introduced to eConestoga already. One thing I will point out is I post a lot of information up on announcements. So make sure that you keep an eye open for those. You'll get emails when I post an announcement. Don't ignore them. They're going to be there for a reason. I don't just post to say hello. Our Zoom meeting links are going to be in announcements. All the rest of that kind of thing will be up there. Also, your shell is going to get populated out a lot more over the next few days. For whatever reason, the beginning of this semester has been, and the end of the last one has been just absolutely insane. So I've been kind of behind on getting all this stuff put together. But one thing, I'll get all of your evaluations set up timing-wise. Those are going to show up here on the calendar, so you'll see everything that you need to do, and we'll talk about what the evaluations are going to be in a minute. The other thing here, if we look in the content area, and let me do a quick switch here, so this is going to look like what you see instead of what I see. So in content area, a few things to point out is there will be different modules that are going to show up over here on the left for topic areas that we're going to be dealing with. There's only 2 of those there now, but that will populate out to be a lot more as we keep on going. As I'm sure you've been told already, from a course information perspective, you have an instructional plan. I won't spend the time to go through the instructional plan in detail, but make sure you read through that, because that will tell you when all your evaluations are going to be and what they're going to be and what topics we're going to be dealing with as we go through that kind of a thing. So that's going to be important for you to do. There is a lab book template here, which we'll talk about lab books a little bit further down the road when we get closer to you having to put one together, so you'll know what you need to do with that. But you will have to use our template to produce your lab book. You will be working with that using Office 365. Again, we'll talk about details a little bit more with that as we get further down the road. And Professor Yangbo might have something to chat with you about tomorrow morning about that as well. So that is something that you will see coming up. And I'll put a sample up here as well. We changed our lab book format, so I haven't redone the sample yet, so you can see the kind of stuff that goes into it, but I'll make sure that I get that done within the next week on the outside. You're also going to see that there's a module for Zoom session videos. So obviously we're recording everything, and those will get posted up here. So if you happen to miss a class or you need to miss part of a class or something like that, you can always go back and review those at your leisure. All your profs are going to be doing that, the same as me. We've been discussing where those are going to get posted, and I think you'll find that all of your course shells are going to have that Zoom video session or session videos, and they will be posted in that module. As far as content is concerned and expectations for that, so I'm just going to pick on the Intro to Networks module, which is the first one. So you're going to find that there's a few different things that are going to be posted into each of the modules. And this is all here for your learning. I don't lecture, really. You know, I have to make sure that you know what's going on with things, but to me, the value of me being here is that you can learn from my experience, not for me to regurgitate what's in the textbook or something like that, because, you know, you can all read or you wouldn't be here. So the expectation is that you're going to read stuff or somehow or another go through the theory component before we have class. And so in each one of these modules, you're going to find that there are going to be some PDFs. In this particular case, there are 5 of them, and they deal with sort of high points. They're PowerPoint decks basically, but they're kind of the high points of different things that have to do with the module. So the depth that you need to, of understanding that you need is beyond what these are. I always say that these are here as a quick review thing. So for example, you know, if you go into the Intro to Networks, you kind of go through that and you say, yep, I'm totally comfortable with that after reading or whatever, then you're all good. If you go down through that PowerPoint deck and you say, here's something I don't quite get this, go back, reread type of a thing, shoot a question to me if there's something you're not understanding, or in peer chat, which we'll get into in a little bit as well, and make sure that you're kind of up to speed on that. You're also going to find links to textbooks. So there's 2 textbooks that we're using. And every one of these modules will have links to 1 or more. So those are going to be labeled, again, it's going to be a link and it's going to be chapter something in whatever the textbook is. If you're a reader when it comes to learning, that's your link to knowledge there. If you're not a reader, there's also, so here's 2 chapters in the book. If you're not a reader, there's also a bunch of theory videos, links that you'll find. What I usually suggest to people, do both. You know, read the book, watch the videos. Some people are not great at comprehension when it comes to, you know, reading. And if not, then, you know, videos are here. Some people are not great at comprehension when it comes to videos. And if that's the case, then reading is here. So take your choice. Again, I recommend both, but take your choice. The video links are mostly from a guy by the name of Kevin, oh man, I just lost his last name. He's been doing a lot of training in the networking field for many years. He has his own training company and that kind of thing. And these videos are ones that from a course that, excuse me, he's posted up on O'Reilly Learning. So I've basically just been linking to those, and all the theory side of things is here as well. So at least, you know, go through the videos. There's probably in any one module, maybe an hour's worth-ish kind of a thing, which means you can cover all your theory in about an hour. And, you know, so that's another opportunity for you. From a learning perspective. The other thing you'll find, this one doesn't have any because it's kind of an intro level, but other modules you'll also find that there is practical exercises that are involved in that. And those are the kind of things, some of the work we'll be going through in class together. Some things will be, you know, work for you to do outside of class on your own to make sure that you're kind of up to speed on everything that's going on. So you'll see that kind of stuff posting up as well. And anytime in class that we're doing anything where there's whiteboard stuff and that type of thing, I always save all the whiteboards from class and I'll post those up as well. So you can go back and review those as well from a learning perspective. So that's kind of the content that we'll be going through, and the instructional plan tells you week by week what to look at from a content perspective before we get together, and then what we're going to be doing in class. So that's kind of how all of that works out. Questions on any of that before we go and look at a couple of other things quickly? No? Okay, so the only other thing I wanted to do today, I don't do this very often, but there are a few slides with some information that I want to go through to get started. You guys know about all the portals and that kind of thing so far. My Conestoga these days you can kind of ignore. We used to have to use that a lot, but your student portal obviously is a key area for you to keep an eye on. That's more from an administrative side if anybody needs to get some information to you or something like that. Administratively, eConestoga for all of your course shells. Make sure your college email, make sure that's linked into on your phone and on your laptop and that kind of thing, so you're getting the notifications. Free software, I'm not going to worry about this too much today. We kind of talked about in orientation, you get access to tons and tons of software. So all the Microsoft stuff. Professor Yingbo is going to be working with you tomorrow. I expect to get whatever software development tools that you need, and that's going to be part of this free software thing. Some stuff you're not going to need to worry about until you get to future semesters, so not going to worry about that today. And then the other thing is we are going to be using Packet Tracer. So I talked about the textbooks a minute ago. So we're going to be using the software called Packet Tracer. And what I want you to do between now and next Monday is get the software downloaded and installed. Now, the way that you do that is you have to sign up for a course that's free at Cisco. This is the link here. And if you follow that link, you will see on that web page that there's a sign up button. So you're going to want to do a sign up. They will send you a confirmation that you're signed up for that course. You don't actually have to take it, but you're signed up for the course. And once you've got that, you can log in to the NetAcad site. And once you've logged in with a valid account, you're going to see that there is a resources link. Click on that and there'll be a place that you can download Packet Tracer, and then you can grab Packet Tracer for whatever platform. So if you're running Windows, you're running Mac, you're running Linux, doesn't matter. All of that's there. The one thing, please, 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 please don't be that person that downloads a copy of Packet Tracer from some download site that is not this one, because a lot of times they will label a certain, that the download is a certain version that is not that particular version, and you're going to submit a file that is not going to work to me for grading. I'm going to go, yeah, this isn't going to cut it. You're going, but sir, why can't you open my file? And I'm going to look at you and say, well, are you using this version of Packet Tracer? Well, yes, because that's what I downloaded. And we're going to look at it and find out, no, that is not actually the right version. And then I'm going to say, where did you get this? And you're going to say, oh, I got it from here. And it's like, okay, well, that's really not where you're supposed to download it. So don't be the person that's panicking because you're in the middle of a test and you can't get the files to work. So definitely get your Packet Tracer from here. If you run into any questions, any problems, anything like that, reach out, let me know, and we'll get you sorted out with that. Grading is something you need to know about. So we're going to have two tests. They are weeks 6 and 12. I think it's in the instructional plan. I'll have to go and make sure of that. Tests are written and a combination of written and practical. Written meaning that you will have questions you have to write answers in. So we don't do multiple choice. We don't do true or false. We don't do any of that kind of stuff because that doesn't really, I'm going to steal a line from Professor Yingbo. There are basically no jobs in IT where your job is sitting around answering multiple choice questions. So that's not the way that we evaluate. There are also lab book submissions. As I said before, we'll get into detail a little bit more than that later on. When we get closer to lab books, I'll explain what those are and everything you have to do. There's something called a review video assignment. So what this is going to be is every week starting, not next week, but the week after that. So on Monday, we're going to go through this in more detail. All of that reading or videos that I want you to review ahead of time, you're going to submit a very short 1-minute video as an assignment every week. And what you will end up doing in that essentially is showing me that you actually did your reading or watching the videos ahead of time. And if you choose not to do that, that's okay. It simply means you're not going to get that 6% of your mark. And if you do it, then it's going to be an easy 6% and you're going to learn things better, which is also going to be awesome. One assignment, which is worth 15%, and we have a final exam, which is worth 25. Final exam is also going to be a combination of written and practical. And the assignment, you're going to be working with a partner on that. So that's going to be a group assignment. Questions about grading? Actually, let me move this video thing because I can't see the chat. Oh yeah, privacy issue with the classes, yes. These videos are not going to be posted anywhere, or nor the ones that you're making. They're not going to be posted anywhere that's going to be public. So it could be, I don't use the Zoom cloud for the videos. I actually download the files and then I'll edit and I'll upload those. So nobody else is going to be able to see those, as far as that's concerned. And the same thing, the stuff that you're going to be submitting to me, that's not going to be in a public place that other people are going to be able to see it. So don't worry about the privacy part of that. Also for the videos, if you are going to have to use your camera for that, we can't, because we can't authenticate if you just do audio. But if you have any privacy concerns, let me know, and we can discuss that. And finally, last thing I want to talk about, I know we're going over time a little bit. If anybody's tight for time, you can take off and then pick this up later. Something called certification exams. This is something that the IT industry is pretty big on. We do not teach to certifications, which means that we do not teach our courses from the perspective that when you're done, you can go out and you can write a certification exam. However, having certifications, industry certifications, is something that can be good and it can help you get a job. So in networking, there are two that you might want to consider, and between all of your networking courses will get you pretty close. As far as a foundation is concerned, you'll have to do some additional studying, but you should be in pretty decent shape to study up and pass. One is called Network Plus from an organization called CompTIA. CompTIA is an organization that basically puts together and administers IT industry exams. And a lot of them have a plus on the end of it. So Network Plus is the one that we're looking at. The idea behind this is that if you pass this, then you can demonstrate that you have some pretty basic knowledge with respect to networking. The exam's an hour and a half. There's 90 questions. It's true, false, multiple choice, fill in the blank, like that kind of thing. About 75% to pass and $330 US to take the exam. These are written through an organization called Pearson VUE, and if any of you get to the point that you want to start looking at taking these exams, reach out and I can fill you in on all the details of that. The other one is Cisco specific. It's called Cisco Certified Network Associate, or CCNA. This one, in addition to demonstrating knowledge, you also have to demonstrate your ability to configure and troubleshoot. So there's a little bit of practical in that one, which is not in the Network Plus exam. And you will find, if you're interviewing, that CCNA is a little bit more highly respected than what the Network Plus is, but CCNA is also harder to pass than what Network Plus is. Again, so this one's longer. It's 2 hours. It's about 120 questions-ish. That will vary a little bit. Not every exam has the same number of questions. And it's basically about the same price. It's 300 US to take that exam. It's also done through Pearson VUE, and you do it on the computer kind of a thing. So I would recommend, think about one of these when you're getting closer to finishing the program, because when you go out to interview, if you can say that you've got some of these certifications, you'll be a leg up on other people that are applying to the same position. Let me see, quick questions here. Opinion on MCSA certifications getting retired. Yeah, it's about time. Those things are not great. Proper classes starting. This is actually part of one of your proper classes. This is the intro to the course. So next week we're going to be into this hot and heavy to get through everything that we need to. Oh, the other thing I'll also mention with this before I forget, we're missing 2 sessions because of holiday Mondays. So last Monday and then Thanksgiving is also a holiday. We're going to be making up those time slots. I don't know what those are going to be yet exactly. We'll kind of sort that out as we go. But at some point, I'm going to be posting an announcement and telling you, hey, this is going to be our makeup session for missing that. $329 the fee, yes. Yeah, that's how much you have to pay to take the exam. They're not cheap. One thing you can do if you're looking at doing one of these certification exams, kind of keep an eye open. If you're looking at Network Plus, keep an eye open on the CompTIA site. If you're looking at doing CCNA, keep an eye open on the Cisco Learning site, because every now and then they'll come up with discounts, kind of a thing. You might get like, 10, 15% off the fee, like that kind of a thing. Or sometimes they'll come up with an offer that you, if you fail the exam, you can take it a second time without charge. Because if you fail the exam, then, you just blew 300 US and you have to go back and pay that again. Are the certification exams mandatory? Absolutely not. Not from our perspective. In order to graduate and get your diploma from Conestoga, you just have to pass your classes. But yeah, it can be beneficial. Not necessarily. Some organizations, when they're hiring, they totally ignore certifications. Other companies, live and die by them. It's like, if you don't have certifications, we won't hire you, kind of a thing. It's like, okay, fine. I don't agree with that, but I'm not the person making the decision, so my opinion doesn't count under those circumstances. So yeah, most of the time they're kind of beneficial in that they'll help you. Here's the way that I look at this. I'm a hiring manager. I've got 2 people I've interviewed. I'm not sure which one to hire because they're both equal to me after the interviews. If one has certifications and one doesn't, I'll take the person with the certifications, because that shows me that they actually really have the motivation to go out and do some things. The other person, I might think they're motivated, but I'm not 100% sure. There are, so somebody mentioned that there are videos about this. There are tons of videos on YouTube about all the different certifications and what's beneficial, what's not. Take some of that stuff with a grain of salt, because some of those people are basically shills because they get a kickback if you go and take a certification and it's through one of their affiliate links. So just be a bit careful with that. Yeah, most of the time they're kind of beneficial. Do certifications expire? Yes, they do, and they have to be renewed. Depending on the certification, it's typically either 2 or 3 years. And the way that you get recertified can be a little bit different. So for example, if you do Network Plus, and within the time period for Network Plus before it expires, if you do another CompTIA exam, say for example, A+ or Server Plus or something like that, then that also re-ups your Network Plus certification for another 2-year period. So I kind of look at that and go, really? So you write and pass an exam that has something to do with Linux, and all of a sudden that requalifies you for networking? It's like, really? But that's the way they do it. So yeah. With Cisco, if you write a higher level exam, actually, I think that I'm not sure if they changed this recently or not. I think I read something, but normally what will happen is they will also re-up. If they don't, then if you look at it and say, hey, I've got a higher level certification than CCNA, fine. You've got, CCNA is good, obviously. What certifications do I have? I've got A+ Network Plus, a bunch of Microsoft stuff. I had a Linux at one point in time, but that expired quite a while ago. And that's all, I think. Don't quote me on that. I might have written some other certifications I've forgotten about now. And we are already 10 minutes past, so I don't have a time limit. I've got a little bit of time this morning, but I know that some of you might have other things to do. So if you want to kind of jump out and go away, that is absolutely fine. I'll keep the recording going. If anybody else has any questions that they want to ask, I'm more than happy to hang around and answer those. But that brings us up to basically a wrap for what I wanted to make sure that you knew for this morning. As I say, anybody wants to hang around and ask questions, that's fine. There is some stuff that I want you to do as far as reading, and that's to look at the instructional plan. So everything in that intro to networks, hopefully you'll have watched the videos before Monday. If not, for those of you who are taking off, I'll see you guys on Monday, bright and early at 8 o'clock in the morning.